Hey, everybody. Man, sure are appreciative of you checking us out. And this is the culmination of this is the third part in a series. We're learning about miracles and is God still in the miracle business? And today we've got another fine, amazing, great, terrific interview with another pastor and a good friend of mine, Pastor Eddie Ellison of Middle Cross Baptist Church in Hixson. He answers some of these questions, and then we have a little fun and get to talk about a few different things. I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's see what Mr. Eddie has to say today. I guess we need to welcome our very special guest from, and correct me if any of this is wrong, but from Middle Cross Baptist Church. He is the current senior pastor.
Yep.
Eddie Ellison, and that would be Pastor Ellison to you. Now, I don't know. What do you refer? How do we refer to you? Is it you go by? Do we need to call you Pastor Eddie, Daddy Eddie, Mr. Ed? I don't know what the proper way to refer to you as.
Eddie is fine with me. Just Eddie. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've known Eddie for quite some time. I believe he was about a year ahead of me in high school, and we played some guitar together back in the early 90s, late 80s, something like that.
Yeah, right around there. Yeah.
Fun times, really good stuff.
Some of that late 80s hair metal.
Yeah, I loved it. I don't know. Eddie, were you a hair metal guy? Were you ever into the...
Not only was I, I still am.
Yeah, well, good. Yeah, me too. I mean, Hair Nation is on my list of Sirius XM radio stations.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's pretty good. But we started off easy, and this is something that's new to us here lately. But we're going to start off by asking Eddie a surprise question. What was your first car?
My first car that was just mine?
Yes.
It was a 1971 Volts. No, excuse me. My very first one was a 1967 Volkswagen Beetle.
Oh, wow.
Sweet.
Do you know, I think I remember you driving a Beetle now that you say that.
The one you probably remember was the one I was about to mention. The 71, it was a Baja Bug.
Okay, yeah.
On it and the fiberglass fenders.
Did you do the Baja kit yourself, or did you buy it that way?
It was already like that when I bought it.
All right.
And it didn't have reverse, so I had to be careful where I parked.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the best thing.
Whoever the passenger was reverse.
It's just like my go-kart. I have a go-kart that does not have reverse, and it's real annoying sometimes.
Absolutely. It takes planning. Got to plan well.
But Eddie's a very he studied. Well, let's talk about a little bit about your education. Where did you get your education, and when did you know you were led to be a minister or a pastor?
I actually knew I was going to. I felt the Lord calling me into the ministry back in the 90s. Didn't really know what to do with that, and quite frankly, didn't have a lot of guidance as to what I was supposed to do. But what I did know to do was just any opportunity that was open to me, I took it. Any door that opened, I stepped through it. Flash forward to 2006. I start, I feel like I need to kind of go all in, and I began praying and searching the scripture and asking the Lord to show me and what he would have me to do, and talked to my pastor, and the thing of getting a good education kept coming up. And so I started looking around at schools, and we had some men at our church that were involved at a little school, little 2-year school in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And it's called Fruitland Baptist Bible College now. It was just called Fruitland Baptist Bible Institute when I was there.
Okay.
So I left my job here at Chattanooga Fire Department, and my wife left her job at Precept Ministries, and we packed up and moved to Hendersonville, North Carolina, and we finished there. And from there, I went to Southeastern Baptist, the college at Southeastern Baptist Seminary. It's actually in Wake Forest.
Okay. Well, we won't hold that against you.
Well, it's on the original Wake Forest campus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of neat.
Yeah, it is. And they're still in the admin building. There's these beautiful floors, and there's still the big WF in the middle of the floor there. Or there was as of 2012 from where it used to be Wake Forest. Really cool building. Right. But
well, that's pretty neat. Well, that that's like I said, I've known Eddie for a while, and I trust his responses, and he gives me a very good. On occasion, I will ask him questions relating to religion and the Bible, and he always seems to be very straightforward and knowledgeable. And so I thought this was the perfect guy to ask straight up, is God still in the miracle business today?
So let me you want me to now, or you got something else coming?
No, well, I was going to go ahead and but we'll start it with I have another question, and I believe it'll lead into the answer to that. Was the other part of the beginning part of the question is, and like I said, correct me if any of this is inaccurate, but Jesus gave authority to his disciples, the ability to perform miracles. And so did that authority end with them, or do people still have that authority today in today's world? That's kind of where I wanted to start off at.
Okay. You have in, I think, Matthew and Luke, where Jesus on a couple of occasions, one time he gives power to, gives authority to the 12 right. to do miracles. And then Luke 10, he gives authority to 70 people and sends them out ahead of him. This is before he goes to Jerusalem. And they're kind of preparing the way for him. And he gives them power to do things, and they come back and they are like, Lord, even the evil spirits are subject to us. I think that particular authority was given just for that incident, or for that event, for them going into the villages ahead of him. Now you do find later on, and here's the thing: you don't find all of them doing miracles. You find Peter and John doing some miracles. And then you find the Apostle Paul is able to heal people as well. They didn't all do it, or we don't have record of it. We do have record, like I said, of Peter and John and Paul. I don't believe that is still operative. And here's why. Even as you read the book of Acts, you kind of find the emphasis on the miracles going away.
Okay.
It happens less and less. And then after that, it's never really mentioned again. You don't find anything. It kind of fades into the background. And I think there's a reason for it. I think that in those times, it was a transitional time. Some of the prophets did miracles in the Old Testament. Right. That was in part to vindicate their ministry as, hey, this guy is sent from God, and then Jesus comes in and he's doing miracles. It's to vindicate who he says he is. He's the Messiah. The apostles are given this power to do miracles, to heal. Paul was preaching, and it says he was long in preaching, and the guy was named Eutychus, and he's in a window and he falls asleep and he fell out. And died, and then Paul said, "Hey, his spirit's in him." I forget exactly the wording there, but the guy comes back to life. But anyway, I think that they were given that power to vindicate their ministry. Hey, these guys are followers of Jesus. They're doing the same miracles that Jesus did. And like I said, the prominence of those miracles begins to fade throughout the New Testament. In the Gospels, a lot of miracles. In the book of Acts, there's a lot of miracles. And then it fades away. And I, think about this. So the Apostle Paul is in jail one night, and there's an earthquake. He's in jail in Philippi. There's an earthquake, and this jailer, thinks that everybody's going to escape, and he's afraid he's going to lose his life over it. So he's about to commit suicide, and Paul comes in and says, "Hey, we're all here, man." There's a chance there where he could have been delivered from that prison. Peter was delivered from prison miraculously there in the book of Acts. The church is praying for him. An angel wakes him up, and the gates open, and he just walks out of the prison. But both of these men later on would not be delivered. You get to the end of the book of Acts, Paul is chained to a Roman guard under house arrest, writing letters. That's what his ministry ended up being. Peter dies a martyr's death. There's the miracles fade away, and I think it's because they had a certain purpose for a certain time. Okay. And it was to vindicate their ministry. We have the full word of God now. We have the record of those things. That is what I believe God wants us to believe now. And so they didn't have all of the scripture like we do. And I think, as I said, I think God was using that to vindicate their ministries, to point people to the fact that, hey, these guys are working under a power that's not of this earth. And also in the book of Acts, you find that when they did these miracles, a crowd would gather and they would preach the gospel. So that was the bigger issue. It was to help them as they ministered the gospel of Jesus.
It was to give them. Are you saying it was basically to give them credibility to what they were saying was the truth, to where people would see it and be like, "Oh, well, these guys must know what they're talking about. They obviously healed this man, so evidently what he's saying is the truth, and so we need to listen and pay attention." Am I close?
I think so. Like I said, crowds sometimes would gather, and then they would Paul would preach the gospel, and Peter and John would preach the gospel as these crowds gathered when they did miracles. And like I said, they're doing the same, a lot of the same things Jesus did. Right. And people still would have been buzz about Jesus, even though he had ascended back to heaven at that point. There would still be buzz. They would know that, hey, these guys have that power, that Jesus has given them. Of course, not everybody heard, but I think that was the purpose for miracles, and the prominence of those, as you read the scripture, the prominence and the mention of them even really fades away. And
so how do we today, you read things like, let's just go, for example, a man has, they see a tumor on a scan, a cancerous tumor, and then, you've heard the story. They go in and he's been prayed for, and now he doesn't have a tumor anymore. Would you call that a miracle? Would you? I mean, because people prayed for it, or is that just what say ye?
Yes. Do I believe God still works miracles? Yes.
Okay.
Do I believe that is through? Do I think, I'm not going to mention name, but some of these people that claim to be healers, do I believe that God is giving people that power to put their hands on somebody, to do these, whatever, heal them and then take up an offering? That I don't believe that, but I do believe that God still hears and answers the prayers of his people. And sometimes he does do the miraculous. I think my wife may have answered on your Facebook post a few days ago. Was it you that posted something?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Do you know that story? Because if you know it, I'd love for you to tell it, because I haven't said anything about it yet.
Yeah, she had been sick when she was very young, and I can't remember everything, but like if you just touched her, she would bruise.
Ooh.
And the doctors were very concerned, and she was very sick. And so her dad was pastoring at the time, and he got his church, their church, and of course other churches there in their community to around where he pastored to pray. And within a couple of days, it was just, she was fine. Here she'd been sick for a while, and then they prayed. The people prayed, and it was gone. It just cleared up inexplicably.
And and she hasn't had a problem with that since?
Never again.
Yes. Okay.
I say inexplicably, not explicable by medical science.
Okay.
We believe that God had a hand in that, and I believe there's been people that we've prayed for. We went to God with it, and he has healed, but he doesn't heal everybody. But
yeah,
it's not any power in me. It's in the powers with the God who hears the prayer and answers.
right.
I kind of need to circle back to what I intended to say at the very beginning.
Certainly.
I wanted to say, and I'll say it now, is that I believe that God is omnipotent, and I believe that God is sovereign. That means I believe that God has the authority and the right to do whatever he wants to. And he not only has the authority, but he has the ability. If he wants to part the Tennessee River so people can walk across, he can do that if he wants. And I haven't been everywhere in the world and seen everything there is to see. I want to say I'm giving my answers with great humility.
Right.
And knowing that, there are things that maybe other people have had other experiences. I'm just going off of what I know of the scripture and what I have experienced of God myself.
One thing I remember, I've listened to several of your sermons, and I know one of your sermons you had mentioned, and I call this miraculous. You guys were, I don't remember exactly, so you can fill in some blanks for me, but you felt that you needed to leave somewhere and go somewhere else, and you didn't have a job, but you knew God was going to take care of you, and you said, just watch the something about your budget there, and
Oh yeah.
your budget never did run out of money, and you still made it just fine. And like I call that a miracle. I mean, and maybe can you tell a little bit of that story? Do you remember what I'm speaking of at all?
Yeah, I do. It was 2011. I had been at the first church I had ever pastored there in North Carolina, Siler City, North Carolina. I'd been there for a little over 2 years. I just felt like it was time to move on. I don't know why. I just couldn't get away from, hey man, it's time for me to move on. And I prayed about it for a long time, worried over it, stressed over it, because here we are 7 to 7.5 hours away from home. We're strangers there still. Didn't have much of a support system apart from the church, and it was just an agonizing decision to make because just so much uncertainty about it. And we had bought a house. We still had mortgage payments to make, and
Right.
Anyway, it got to the point where I was like, I have got to pull the trigger on this. I have got to move on. And so I told the deacons first, and then I brought to the church and said, I just feel like it's time to move on. And we did not know. I mean, I was in school, and I paid for all of my own tuition and books, and the school was like an hour and a half from where we lived, and so I'm driving back and forth. And I'm saying all that to say there wasn't a savings account. We didn't have
Right.
No, there was no safety net to fall on,
Right.
and other than God. And so I did this, and not knowing what was going to happen. And Pam had budget there on a spreadsheet. She's Mrs. Excel herself, and she had a spreadsheet with all of her bills. And at the top of it, she had, "Watch how God provides." And so it's like, here's what the numbers say, but we know God is bigger than all of this. And
Right.
so for 4 months, I think it was, 4 months, I think all but 2 Sundays, I was in a church somewhere preaching. And of course, they, most of them, they gave us a little money, when we would come to preach. I had a couple of revival meetings that just popped up. But even with that, the math didn't work out.
Right.
Yet, it always seemed to be there when we needed it.
Reminds me of, and maybe not in the same quantity, but gives a little bit of aftertones of 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. And see, and I call, that's, to me, that's a miracle, and the fact that you made it, and there was always something provided. I think the non-believer may look at it as just it's all about perspective. And they say, "Oh no, they can explain it away," and that. But to a believer, you know where that's coming from.
Right.
You have there's a faith or something. I just love to hear these stories of miraculous happenings, and
Right.
It just makes me smile on the inside, and maybe that's selfish, because I think it helps concrete my beliefs. I'm not 100% on this. That's not all I believe in, but it's nice to see it happen, and when it does, I think credit needs to go where credit is due.
Right.
If that makes any sense to you.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I like your aspect. I like your take on that. That was really interesting, and I absolutely love that story.
There's been so many things, just like that of hey, we don't know where this is going to come from. Just need that we had, and God just put it on somebody's heart to, just out of their kindness. There's been
Right.
times to walk to the mailbox and there'd be a check there, and I didn't add. We don't. Me and my wife, we don't talk about all of our stuff. We're not.
Right.
We're not always, and we kind of kept it between us and God, even our needs, and He saw to it that we got what we needed when we needed it.
Yeah, He's the only one that needs to know.
That's right.
And I another person I listen to says, God is your source. And they say, you think you're getting paid from your job, but beyond that, God is your source of everything. So
yes,
and that comes back to the miraculous point. So I mean, I think that's great. It makes me really excited to hear. But do you know any? This is I'm going to shift gears here for a second. Do you know any good jokes?
Any good jokes?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Any bad ones? Any?
No. I'm trying to think. If we were just talking and there wasn't any recording, and I wasn't, I would be able to roll jokes. I rattle them off for hours, but I can't think of anything right now.
Yeah, well, I did put you on the spot, so we can edit that out if it need be. That's no problem.
But no, seriously, I can't think of any joke. Good, bad, ugly. I can't. I'm sitting here with the wheels turning. And
yeah, that's all right. It just popped up in my head. My ADD turned on and thought, hey, I wonder if he's got any good jokes.
Well, if one hits me, I'll just blurt it out in the middle of what we're talking to. But on miracles,
Yes.
I believe that God has provided, and I see things where, we pray and people are healed and doctors have to even kind of scratch their head, of how did this happen? And, they have to acknowledge that it was something beyond their span of control.
Right.
But I was looking at when you asked me about answering some questions. I started thinking about C.S. Lewis. He wrote a whole book on miracles. Now his definition of a miracle is when God, I think he used the word interfere, when God interferes with nature.
Okay.
And so you asked me if anybody had that power like the apostles did, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any person is given that kind of power now. I think that was for a time and it went away. I don't see those biblical scale miracles happen.
Right.
Well, let's think about it. Creation was a miracle. C.S. Lewis, he says that creation, he talked about that being, the first miracle, God speaking to nothing and nothing becoming something. We could all agree that's miraculous.
Very much so.
The parting of the Red Sea, that's God interfering with nature. There's a story in the book of Joshua where they are at war with the Canaanites, and the battle's been going on, but they're just not quite finished yet. And Joshua turns towards the sun and says, "Sun, stand still." And the sun stays up longer than it should have till they could get the battle won. You've got the story, I think it's in 2 Kings, of some prophets. I forget exactly what happened, but the head flew off of the axe head flew off of the handle, goes into the water and sinks. And Elisha takes a stick and throws it in the water. The axe head floats. You've got those type of miracles. You've got Elijah who prays over a widow's son who has died, and he comes back to life. You've got that miracle of Elijah starts staying there with the widow at Zarephath, and all she had was a little bit of oil and a little bit of meal.
Right.
And what little bit they had lasted through the famine. There's all these miracles that happen in the Old Testament where God, really interferes with nature. And I don't see those things happening now. Is God able? Absolutely. If he wanted to, like I said, he could part the Tennessee River. If he wanted to. Oh yeah, and that's another one. As they are entering into the Promised Land, as they're crossing the Jordan over into Canaan, God does something like he did when they were leaving Egypt, and he stops the flow of the Jordan River, and while it's at flood stage, and it just dries up long enough for them to walk across, and then the water starts flowing again. You've got these instances where God interferes with nature, and I don't see that type of thing happening now. While God is still doing things and he still displays his power, he's I don't see those type of things happening now.
Right.
I think they had a purpose, and I think their purpose was to show. You think about the Red Sea. The parting of the Red Sea, that gets mentioned really throughout the scripture. David mentions it a lot there in the Psalms. They use that in their mind. That was God's great act of deliverance, of redeeming and freeing his people. And I think those Old Testament miracles, they were meant to point us to Christ. They were meant to point us to one who would be raised from the dead. You think about the axe head floating. Stuff can be raised that shouldn't be raised. Elisha, the prophet that followed Elijah, Elisha they threw a dead man in his tomb, and when the man's body touched Elisha's corpse, or one of my favorite words in the English language, carcass. When the dead man's body touched Elisha's carcass, his bones, he sprang back to life. I think those Old Testament miracles are pointing us. They're meant to point us to the great miracle worker himself, Jesus, whose the greatest miracle, the greatest display of God's power is Jesus's resurrection from the dead. And I think the purpose of all those Old Testament miracles are pointing us to Jesus, and they're pointing us to the cross, and they're pointing us to the empty tomb. And that is the greater witness that we believe. And I think that was the purpose for all of those. I think we have a more sure word now, because we have the record of Jesus's life, his death for us, and his resurrection from the dead.
Well, here's one, and this will tie in our joke theme with that. I've got one. I remembered something. There was this lady on, and this ties in. Just believe me. Just trust me for a minute. Walk with me.
I trust you, man.
There's Josh is going crazy because he hates when I jump around.
It's all right.
But he's going. There's this lady, and she's on an airplane reading the Bible. This man comes up beside her and says, "You don't believe all that stuff in there, do you?" And she says, "Well, sure I do. It's the Bible." He says, "Even you believe even about that? What about that guy that got swallowed by that whale and lived for all that time?" Said, "You mean Jonah? Yeah, I believe that." She said, "Well, how do you think he survived in there?" And she said, "Well, I don't know. When I get to heaven, I guess I'll ask him." He says, "What if he's not in heaven?" And the lady looks at him and says, "Well, I guess you'll have to ask him." So there you go. I mean, there's it's miracle related.
Well, and here's one. There are many who believe that brings up something else. There are many who believe that Jonah died in that whale.
Oh,
that now it doesn't say explicitly,
right?
That Jonah died in that whale. And by the way, a lot of people don't believe that story. They believe it's allegory. Mm-hmm. And that Jonah is representative of the people of Israel who were supposed to have been a light to the Gentiles, but they were failing in their duty. I get that. I do not agree with that at all. I see that viewpoint, though. I believe that it happened. And my old saying is, if it would have said that Jonah was swallowed by a salamander in a farm pond, I would believe that too. Because I believe the record of the scripture. But Jesus tips his hat to Jonah. He says, when they asked Jesus to show them a sign, they're wanting to see him do a miracle, as if he hadn't already done miracles.
Right.
But he says, and that's the other thing. The Bible often refers to miracles, signs and wonders. What does a sign do?
It points you to something.
Yeah. And so they are meant to point us to Jesus. Jesus said, when they said, "Show us a sign," Jesus said, "It's a wicked and adulterous generation that seeks after a sign, and there won't be one given to it except for the sign of Jonah." And then he says, "For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Oh. And so here you have Jesus saying, "Hey, that story is about me." That he tips his hat to Jonah that it happened, and that Jonah was in that whale. But he says he says, "You use that to look at me." Here's I wanted to call, when I preached that text, I wanted to call it, "Here's your sign."
You should have.
Here's your sign, the empty tomb.
The empty tomb. I see. You should have. That's just good stuff.
And so Jesus is that those miracles, that all of that is meant to point us to him.
Get her done.
Get her done.
No, but that's great stuff, man. I don't want to take up any more of your time. We've taken up way enough. You just have to bill us. Just send them the bill to Josh, and he'll get a check in the mail.
I'm just the technical guy. You're the money man.
Yeah, technically you have to pay him. No, just kidding. Man, I sure do appreciate the stories, and I appreciate getting to listen to you online and stuff. And hopefully everything will get back to normal eventually, and your church will be back whole and in session and going through the motions and making America great again. Wait a minute. I don't know about that.
Hey, I appreciate y'all having me on. I do. I enjoyed it.
Well, you are a scholar and a gentleman.
Neither, but I appreciate your confidence.
And rock on. And for those who have never seen Eddie, he looks like a later version of James Hetfield. Matter of fact, I have a picture somewhere of the two side by side, and I dare say you can't choose which is which.
That's awesome. That's been my goal my whole life. I can die now.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I hope you don't, but one day you will. But hopefully, it's not anytime soon.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. Well, tell the wife and the Satan spawn that I said hi.
The devil's dog.
The devil's dog.
That's right. Yes. Well, all right, guys. I appreciate it. Josh, it was good meeting you.
Good to meet you too, bud. Appreciate all your time.
Hey, thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Good stuff. I appreciate it, man.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.